Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. We all thought that things were going to get over soon with respect to COVID-19, but it appears there is something called a second wave. When businesses thought that that challenge was over, it looks like they have to brace themselves for another one. But how about those strategies that kept some of them surviving in the first wave? And what strategies can they adopt this time around to stay alive? I'll be engaging some businesses that have actually been able to weather the storms. You talk about the managing director of Casa Preco Limited, Mr. J. We'll also be speaking to since she actually into the fashion business. She managed to actually adopt some strategies to stay alive in terms of this second wave. But what will be the impact of all these things on the employment sector? We hear from Austin Game. He is a labor consultant. And what strategies can businesses also adopt going forward, since it looks like maybe this COVID-19 may be with us forever and ever? So what are some of the strategies that they can adopt to stay alive, and how is that going to impact on businesses and workers out there? My name is George Afin. I'll be your host for PM Express Business Edition. So let's get in straight and engage some of our guests who are connecting with us virtually. Let me get onto the Zoom platform, connecting with them virtually, and engage the managing director of Casa Preco, Richard J, that Austin Game, labor consultant, Mabel Simpson. She is into the fashion industry, and also actually Charles Mensah. He's a chartered consultant, accounting consultant, and also a financial advisor. So let me start first with Mr. J, managing director of a beverage firm, Casa Preco. I believe that your firm is doing quite well. You managed to switch some of your production lines to go into sanitizing and all the rest. Let me first ask you, how are things for you right now?
For us at Casa Preco, I believe we are doing okay in this pandemic. I believe that innovation was one of the things that we decided to do in order to stay relevant in this current season. So when the pandemic hit, we decided to start sanitizers, which was in short demand, short supply in Ghana. So we decided to step in and supply the markets, change some of our lines from alcoholic production to sanitizers. And the market also took up the product, and I believe loved the product. And also, I mean, we all wanted to stay safe, so people bought the product, and demand did very well for us. So that's one of the products that we introduced, and that also brought in some good revenue for the business.
Mr. J, can I also find out for you, was it about the module of the business or the organogram of the business, or how the business was structured, that made it easier for you to switch during these challenging times so that you managed to weather the storms?
Well, for us, I believe that certainly some certainly played a strong part. We had the bottling facilities, and we also had the main raw material for sanitizers, which is the ethanol. We are one of the largest suppliers of ethanol in Ghana, as well as we also produce a lot of alcoholic drinks. So we had the facilities, and we had the raw materials. We just had to get more advice from other sources, especially people in the pharmaceutical. We invited USAID to come in, and so they advised us a lot on how to make the sanitizers from the raw materials that we had. So we were a bit lucky that this situation brought up, put us in a position in which most of the raw materials was already available.
I understand that we are working to your video to pop up. Even though we are speaking to Mr. Richard J. via Zoom, we have some little challenge with the video, and that is why we are not seeing his face. But how is the business doing right now in terms of Casa Preco? From us outside, it appears it's been all smooth and rosy for you, right?
It's not been all smooth. I would say that it's been both good and bad. We have the issue where, in terms of restrictions, people are not going out to events. People are not bars. So certainly that will have an effect on our sales. And we had the issue when the lockdown was at a higher stage where nobody's going out and everything. Consumption was very low for us. However, our plan B was to step in with the sanitizers to help support the business as well as support the Ghanaian populace. At the time, there was no sanitizers. People were selling sanitizers at a very ridiculous price. So this was how it affected us. I'll say right now, logistics is a big challenge for us. Trying to get in raw materials from Europe, Asia, and Americas. It's really having effect on the business due to the pandemic. So it's not been all rosy for us. However, I believe that people will still drink at home, but it's not as much as they go to events. So it's not been too bad, but it has affected us as well.
But it could be rightly said that you are quite breaking even. But you made a very critical point in your submission about raw materials. And again, if you look at data from the Ghana Statistical Service, we've seen that there is little importation, and even with respect to import inflation as well. Does it mean that can you meet the demand going forward since you're having some challenges in importing raw materials?
Certainly, right now we are not able to meet our demand because of silence on the raw material. I'll say that a lot of the countries in Europe that we import some of our raw materials are having serious challenges with the COVID. So some of them are in lockdown that they are not able to order something, and then it's going to take something that will take about 3 weeks to come in. Now it's taking about 2 months or 3 months to come in. So certainly that's having effect on us. I believe also, while many countries are on lockdown, you have the I'll say Asian countries, or let's say China, that really did well with the pandemic, and a lot of people are now, they have a lot of demand globally since they are the country that is working mostly. So that's also affecting prices from Asian countries as well. However, we are trying our best to supply the products that the Ghanaians love from our factory.
Mr. J, I'll come back to you. Let me bring in Mabel Simpson. She's into the fashion business as well, more of a medium to small size business as well. And whilst others were shutting down, Mabel, you are still in business. What are you doing? Or a lot of your customers are so much in love with you, so they are still purchasing your products.
Hi. So for us, during the first wave, during the lockdown, we shut down for about a week. But after that, we realized that we still had some raw materials that we could use for face masks. Initially, WHO had stated that it wasn't advisable to be using the fabric or the cloth face mask. But when the numbers, the COVID numbers started going up, then there was a change in talk saying that it was advisable because, the usual surgical face mask had run out on the market. So now they were advising people to protect themselves with a fabric face mask. So immediately we went into production of face masks because now it had become a need. So people were not buying accessories, they were not buying bags because everyone was home. But we sustained our business by making the face mask. And we had to put in some interventions because, one, we had to make sure that the team members that were working on the product were safe. So we had to employ or contract people in the community. You know that if you look around us, if you live in a community, you're definitely going to have tailors and seamstresses who, are in your community who don't have to commute to work. So we employed their services. And then we had to house some of our team members also to make sure that everyone was safe. No one was using public transportation to work. So that's how we survived the first wave of COVID.
Mabel, how prepared are you for a second wave with all the things going around us? The expectation is that it might be serious than what we thought. Not being or trying to play the devil's advocate, do you think that you're going to survive this?
The first wave taught all of us a lesson. You can never be prepared, but then we've all learned our lesson. So, you need to look at the numbers.
It looks like we're having a little technical challenge connecting or hearing Mabel Simpson. But let me bring in Mabel, can you hear me? Let me bring in Charles Mensah. He is a financial consultant.
Hello.
Yeah, Mabel, you can go ahead. Sorry.
All right. I think my network went off.
Sorry. Yeah. So you're making
okay. So we've learned our lesson. So with this second wave, yes. Before the first wave, come to think of it, did we ever think that we would be able to, did anyone think about producing face masks or hand sanitizers in Ghana? No. But then we realized that there are certain products that we can manufacture in Ghana, and we can reduce the importation of those products. So, after the lockdown and the panic and everything, we went back into our mainstream production, but then still producing face masks on the side, and it's kept us in business actually. And also, as an SME, we put in certain strategies. We had to look at payment, options for consumers, digital payments. Now, about 80% of our customers are using digital payments, unlike, in the past where, a lot of people wanted to make cash payment. So you need to make sure that you have all the, payment options in place. And then also you need to look at online sales. We have a physical shop, but we have a lot more delivery. So you need to develop a delivery system where people don't come into the shop all the time. You need to work around this. You need to make sure that, or assure your customers that, you're adhering to all the COVID, safety protocols during production, after production, and even how the products are transported to them. So aside the products, just manufacturing the product, these are some of the things that we've put in place. And we know that once we're able to work around it, we are going to survive the second wave.
Maybe hold on there. I'll come back to you, and I'll also come back to Mr. Richard Ejay, Managing Director of Kasapreko. Going forward again, what would he want those who are managing the economic space to assist indigenous firms like his to stay alive and being able to meet the local demand? I'm looking at the impact on employment as well, and those who are even within the current job space. But let me quickly get to Mr. Charles Mensah. He's a financial consultant and also a business strategist. Mr. Mensah, for you, looking at what happened wave one, are you worried about what will happen again to these businesses with respect to the second wave? Mr. Mensah, if you can hear me, I was trying to get your thoughts on what do you think is going to happen to businesses' second wave. Do you think that they are better prepared now, or a lot more might be going down?
Not really. I think the experiences that some of them have had in the first wave will pave way for the second wave. The second wave really is affecting quite a number of persons and individuals. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us, we haven't had a shutdown on the economy. So activities are still going. And that's the respite that the businesses can rely upon. As we speak, most companies have really revised their notes and applied new strategies. If you have a main shop in a main street, the shop now becomes a warehouse. So you connect to a delivery system and the goods will be picked from the warehouse, because you would not have individuals coming to the shop just because of the risk associated with it. So if I'm to go by what Mabel said, M. Sims said, the shops that she has becomes a warehousing point, and it has an application where client would go onto the website or some form of internet, and then they will have access to what they want. Immediately they place the order, you have a logistics company who pick the item and deliver. So these days you see a lot of motorbikes in the system doing delivery services, enhancing the flow. So indeed, businesses themselves have responded to this. As to the volume of the business they're doing, it's where we have to wait a while to measure whether they've doubled it or they've increased it. But businesses in general are ongoing. The risk here, however, is with the employees, because when they have public transport, a system of coming to work, when the nature of their business requires that they are physically present, this is where some companies are rearranging themselves, that they run shift, to the extent that when machines are switched on, instead of people staying in the factory floor for more than 6 hours, now some of them are reorganizing themselves that after 2 hours, they go out there for a fresh air, so that they are not really at risk of catching this second wave as we speak. Some have even started talking to, which is a strategy that I've been advising some of our clients, that they should have some insurance policies for their employees to cover some of the medical bills, as well as just in case something happens to them, they can pay and take care of the family. So those who never had insurance for their employees, this is the time also to consider an insurance to cover them. Then some of them have also introduced what I call employee self-service. They have a system where now employees can log on and see when is the work schedule. So as soon as they log on onto the ESS, that's employee self-service, they know that if he goes to work on Monday, the next time he will go to work on Thursday or on Saturday. So we don't have the weekend per se because of the way things are. All we have to do is to produce, and convert our mainstream shops into a warehousing center connected to logistics company, so that we can continue to deliver the goods as we speak. This is the interim, what the strategies that some businesses are adapting, George.
But Mr. Mensah, but what I get from you is that it looks like a lot of these businesses, they have learned their lessons to be able to weather the shocks, or just like having a double engine plane from Rolls-Royce doing a cross-Atlantic flight.
Yes, initially it took a hit, some of them. So some went into sections to look at, to redefine the business that they are in. If you listen to CEO, Mr. J, Kasapequid itself is alcoholic beverage company. But when the first wave hit them, they look at their system and they realize that, look, they can turn themselves into sanitizing company. So we no time, they started fixing it. If you listen to Mabel pretty well, he was making fashion, clothes. But when the first wave hit, she started doing face masks. So businesses themselves, or business owners themselves, are always looking out for things. What they need to do is always look at your object clause. If you are not in that kind of business, you can always add that clause that and any other business, so that immediately something hits you, you can quickly go into any other business, because you can fall under that. Unless otherwise the product that you intend to produce will require some FDA or some EPA approvals. But anything short of that, you always have to respond to the market out there. When things change, you also change. You never had delivery or logistics or motorbikes delivering the goods. We always had our own way of delivering goods. We always have our own way of physically visiting the shops and talking. But now things have changed. The additional cost that is bringing to businesses is the data. Because now everything is on data.
Okay.
Because you are supposed to be connecting via data. So data is increasingly affecting the cost. So if there's any way that something has to be done in terms of speaking to the data providers to borrow the balance, to see inside. In other words, to consider some discounts for businesses so that, we can move, because we are not in normal times. So if the data company, the Ministry of Communication can come in and reduce it, it will help the businesses.
Talking about data, one of my lectures back in Versus once said that data is, let me bring in labor consultant Austin Game. And this is an area that I dread in terms of jobs and employment. It looks like we're still going to see worse numbers, a lot more people being sent home, or maybe what is going to happen? What is going to happen in the job space?
Thank you, George. Honestly, it's a very dreadful period we find ourselves in, and we all have to brace ourselves for it. The reality is that the COVID-19, do we have to still call it COVID-19? Now
COVID-21, right?
Which is reverse. We are in 2021 now. So we've gone through COVID-19, you can call it 20, now COVID-21. The full story has to be understood by all of us. This is a pandemic, regardless of the vaccine that is being proposed wherever. It's not letting down. We're having mutations, we're having variants. Maybe another title will be brought tomorrow again. So clearly what we must appreciate is that what do we do together as stakeholders to survive and to promote our business as we protect our health as well going forward. So management people, government as employer, private employers, public employers, workers, we must see ourselves as stakeholders. The stakeholders are people who seek the success of their undertaking or companies. And if you are seeking the success of your company, there has to be a kind of a paradigm shift, a shift that will be very strategic and innovative. And what it means is that you cannot go with familiar boundaries again. Like the Casaproco gentleman, the MD said, who is going to be drinking alcohol in the midst of this pandemic?
But Mr. Gomez, sorry to step in. But data from outside, for some brief firms, suggests that the numbers have shot up dramatically in terms of consumption of alcoholic beverages.
Well, that's why they are having problems. They are going to have problems with their liver, and they are going to when the pandemic crossed their path a little bit, then they are in a mess. So they have to be very careful. Now, wisely, like rightly Mr. Ajay said, they shifted. There was a shift, and the shift landed them in sanitizer production. And wisely, the market, fell for it, and they made the fortune that they need to make. That made them to survive. It may not be as usual, but it's better than nothing. So this is the time all of us to hold hands, work together strategically. And I wish I were with you and I show you a slide of what it really means to talk about delivering on strategy to make it workable, not just talking shop. Enough of the talking now. Now we must see ourselves not as social partners, beyond that, into the arena of real, genuine stakeholders, having a conversation about issues that affects us. and not argument and debate and I am right, you are wrong. But this is a time to have a simple conversation, which means really that conversation defines the real relationship between labor and management. This is the time for that. This is not a time to blame anybody per se, because the pandemic is not going today, it's not going tomorrow. I'm an employer myself, and I can tell you it's affecting me and my working people, but we have devised strategy. Even today, we were at a meeting when your call came. We held a stakeholder meeting, not as managing director and laborer, but all of us seeing ourselves as colleagues and agreeing as to what innovative and creative measures we can adopt to enable people to work from home. And we can rest assured that we are not going to have the same financial impact as it used to be. It will be a reduced income. It will affect government, it will affect employers, it will affect working people, it will affect the entire society. So all of us will have to brace ourselves for it. And as we go on, maybe I can share other ideas that I think we should evolve and bring about a solution.
In terms of bracing ourselves up for this, Mr. Game, and let me speak to you away from us an employer to an independent labor consultant. For you, it is clear that with the aftershocks of the second wave, majority of those who have been asked to go home, they would not be called back. If you hear me, I was just trying to get your thoughts.
It's very painful, very, very painful. Yeah, very, very painful. And let me say that, you see, there is something we call force majeure. There is something we call termination. There is something we call layoff. When there is a mutual agreement between labor and the employer, that look, what we can do is this. With the pandemic, will not allow us to do the work we do normally. Let's have a layoff, which means that people will go home without necessarily pay for a certain period of time, because the employer don't have the money anyway, because they are not generating any income. And without customer, you are not an employer. So if there is no customer, there is no income. That's the reality. So you go home as if your services, if there is a restoration, then you come back and continue your service from where you left off.
But Mr. Game, I mean...
And so we will not experience any problem. Yeah.
Sorry, we may have having some break in our system, but apologies for that. But Mr. Game,
yes, I'm hearing you.
There is someone who has been at home since March. The agreement was that go home and we'll call you back. Let's be realistic here. It appears this gentleman, with the aftershocks and even the effect of second wave, he will not be called back. That is the reality.
What happened?
Sorry, we're having some little challenge with our internet connection, but Mr. Game, if you can still hear me.
If you can hear me, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Game, please. I can hear you. Just the question that I was trying to enforce is that...
Yeah, I can. Yeah, good. So can I go on?
Yeah, go on, sir. Go on, sir. We'll take a short...
Yeah, the reality is that if you don't have customers, you don't have business.
We have a little challenge with our connection there. Mr. Richard J is the managing director of Casapreco. Mabel Simpson is the team lead at MSINS, and Charles Mensah is a financial consultant and a business strategist. This is PM Express. How do they survive? I'll be getting the thought of Mr. Richard J, MD of Casapreco, and also Charles Mensah, and the labor consultant. We'll be right back after this break. This is PM Express. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we look at surviving the second COVID-19 wave. What can you do if you're a businessman, if you're into the manufacturing sector, and if you're a worker as well? what are some of the things you can adopt to actually stay in business? And I was trying to wrap off with Mr. Osengame, a labor consultant as well. Let me bring him in quickly when I go, and as I go back to Mr. Richard J. He's the managing director of CASAPREC. But Mr. Osengame, for you, I was trying to wrap up with you about the fact that it is clear that the majority of those who've been asked to stay home will not be called back.
Thank you. It's likely. The reality is that business tries on having voluntary customers willing to pay you for your services. And if you don't have customers, it means you are not in business. And this must be clearly understood by everybody, because there is nothing you can do if you don't have customers. And so in the midst of these challenges, obviously, customers are dwindling. Some are not even in business, some businesses are not in business, and therefore they can't do business with you. So clearly what you should understand is that if they cannot keep you, either for the period without pay, so that when all is well and the business is back, you return to work and continue from where you left off as if you did not break service. That is a layoff. When you are terminated, it means maybe some level of incompetency, which is not the case today. It's not a force majeure. This is pandemic. And therefore, layoff is the right thing to do when it becomes very necessary. Unlike the case of CASAPREC, who have found some going beyond familiar boundaries, the familiar boundary of producing alcohol and shifting rightly to sanitizer, and people are patronizing it. That is what you call innovation in action, not talking shop. So we don't have to be creative. Today, those who are into learning and training, and they have to find innovative means of teaching online properly, so as if the people are with you in the face-to-face. We all know the hotels are in trouble. What can they do? They can produce and deliver to your home. It will be up to a point. They cannot survive it that way, because accommodation in the hotels is what survives them. And so if they are not going to have visitors from Europe, from America, from other countries, and from Ghana, then they are in for trouble. So it must be understood by all. Let's not pressurize ourselves. Let's agree to work mutually to the benefit of everybody.
Let me bring in Mr. Richard J. He's managing director.
Unfortunately, that's the situation they find themselves.
Let me bring in Mr. Richard J., managing director of CASAPREC. So for indigenous firms like yours who've managed to weather the storms, and I'll be coming to Mabel Simpson as well, the bigger question is, what should government be doing for you? Putting more requests at your doorstep, more tax reliefs, or what, Mr. J? If you can hear me, managing director.
So from industry perspective, I would say that in 2020, the government did quite a lot for us. You talk about the electricity for 3 months, so that was very helpful from the government. Talk about the water. You talk about them reducing the policy rates, so So I believe the government did a lot, but certainly as local industries will certainly also certainly ask for, especially the local industry or the local companies that are supporting the fight against COVID. So like MSIMS that is producing the face mask, ourselves that are doing the sanitizers, people that are doing the gloves. I believe the government can come in specially to support some of these companies. The government also even worked with some banks, specifically in our side, StanChat, to provide funding, which was at a good rate, to show us up for the production of sanitizers. But I believe that certainly maybe not every industrial company received some support. So can certainly do more. And then this year, certainly Most companies will always ask for lower taxes and all of that. But as industry players, we should also know that the government also needs a lot of us to pay our taxes for them to also support a lot of the, let's say, the employees that are losing their jobs and all of that. So sometimes you can't always ask for lowering taxes. But I believe they've done well, and they should keep on giving us the incentives to support the fight against COVID and to keep afloat.
Mr. J, let me just come in quickly. One of the biggest criticisms against local firms has to do with meeting demand on time. In these times like this, if, for instance, tomorrow the Ministry of Education gives you a contract of providing maybe sanitizers for all the schools here in Ghana, will you be able to deliver?
We will be able to deliver. We will be able to deliver.
Okay.
We are producing about 500,000 bottles of sanitizers a day. So we have the capacity to certainly deliver that. And not only us, there are other, since we started, I was also happy that other alcoholic companies have also started into the sanitizer. So I believe as an industry, even if Casaport is not able to deliver, I'm sure there are other industrial players coming together to be able to deliver and support the government.
Let me bring in, hold on, let me bring in MSIMS here. MSIMS, for you, in a minute, 2 minutes, for you, what do you want government to do for you? Because you can't take away the external factor of government coming in to assist indigenous firms like yours that are doing well and so manage to weather the storm.
George, I mean, you know that we've had this discussion before, and I always say that, and I'll say it again, that I mean, personally, personally for us Sims, we've gotten to a point where, I mean, in times like this, we try to brave the storm. We try to make things happen by not looking up to government to do anything. As an SME or as any business, you need to make sure that your business is set up in such a way that in storms like this, you can survive with or without government support. I mean, yes, I mean, government provided free electricity and then water for a period of time. There was the COVID relief fund. We applied for it. We didn't, unfortunately, we haven't heard anything from them. But that also didn't stop us from, continuing our business. The fact that we didn't receive any support from, for other support from government didn't mean that we're going to shut down. So it's also comes back to, as a business, making sure that you put in the right financial plan for your business so that in times of any pandemic, you can be able to survive.
Let me bring in Charles Mensah. For you, Charles, I mean, what advice do you have for firms who are on the verge of, listen, should I shut the business down because I fear the unknown? What do you have to tell these firms in wrapping up, Charles Mensah?
As long as it's not a service industry where you're doing something that unrelated, but every business as we speak ought not to shut their system. You have to look at new ways of using the existing facilities that you have, existing fixed assets that you have to do new things. Because this pandemic, I must admit, has created more opportunities. Logistics company never used to be there. Motorbikes never used to be there. Internet usage was not as deep as it is now. Designers of logistics software were not there. So all these are business opportunities. So see how you can turn it around. And then those with the warehouses, you can turn those offices into a distribution center to distribute goods for and on behalf of others, so that all the logistics company will pick the items from your end, and then they can distribute it to the final consumer. So don't shut down yet. Look at new ways of doing things. We are not in normal times, and it calls for new ideas.
Mr. Game, I mean, in also trying to wrap up for you, I mean, we've talked about businesses being flexible. For the employee, for the worker, is it too late? I mean, I know firms who are saying that, George, going forward will be heavy on virtual. And we are even advising our workers to quickly acquire some skills. For the worker, what is the way forward?
Well, this is a time to work collaboratively with your employer. Like I said, it's not about we are right, they are wrong. The truth is that this is a pandemic not created by any employer, not created by any worker. It has come to meet us. We'll be here, it may go. Those of us who will survive it. The important thing is for us to work collaboratively. This is the time for management people to see their workers as colleagues, even if it's a laborer. What can we do together to enable us to survive? How can we maximize the use of the little we have to deliver to our customers? Remember, customers make you have business. If today nobody is going to patronize the services of Joy FM, you are in for trouble. So you need customers. So everybody should find ways and means of using the little they have, income they have, to maximize, delivery of quality services to their customers, to enable them to survive. Okay. Let's not find fault with one another now. Let's work, government, employers, unions, working people, private, predominantly Ghana is an agrarian country. Okay. We must make maximum use of everything that we have, and survive. Okay. And if God tarry, the Lord tarry, we will see the way forward tomorrow.
Mr. J, your final words in a minute. Wrapping up your final words in a minute.
Okay, so I would say that in general, this pandemic, as my other colleagues have said, have brought up opportunities for other businesses to step in. And opportunities for me is not only for businesses, for employees as well that have lost their jobs or are in a worst cases. I believe that people should be more entrepreneurial in this pandemic and try to think differently and bring some revenue for themselves. I believe that even if you're home now, as they are saying, you have a lot of bikers around. Why don't you buy a bike if you're a guy and you can learn quickly and then start your delivery business if you have no job. So I believe that employees should also start to think outside the box to find ways and means to keep surviving. But in terms of companies, I believe innovation is certainly a way to go. Innovate will certainly in some of these situations.
Okay, sorry we have to draw the curtain on this program. Thank you so much, Mr. Charles Mensah. Thank you so much, Austin Game. Thank you so much, Mabel Simpson. And thank you so much, Managing Director of Kasapreko, Richard Jade. It looks like we still have to go on strategizing to stay alive, irrespective of how terrible the turbulence might be. I'm George Yafe. Have a great day.